Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, motorists in Nigeria face huge queues at petrol stations across major cities as frustration grows over the multi-headed crises tripped by the highest inflation to have hit the country in almost 3 decades. Also, Ethiopian unions mark International Labour Day by calling on the Labour Ministry to do more to tackle some of the issues dragging on productivity and the economy. Not least was an appeal for peace in Amhara. And Southern Africa faces one of its worst droughts in 40 years as the El Niño weather pattern that has triggered torrential flooding in the east of the continent leaves wildlife floundering around dried up rivers and lakes in Zambia, Malawi and Botswana. But first, Nigerian drivers are facing crippling queues at the pumps this week. In Abuja and Lagos, long lines of vehicles were backed up to petrol stations as commuters waited for hours to fill up, sometimes overnight. The latest fuel shortage has bumped up the cost of public transport, as well as some gas stations have had to up their prices by more than 15%. Many Nigerians are growing increasingly frustrated with President Bola Tinubu's administration.
This is bad. This is not what we voted for, and this is not what we're expecting. The country is bleeding and you are adding more injuries. I mean, with my money, I'm still suffering, sweating. I have other business to attend to. I can't go for it. So how do I feed my family? How do I help the less privileged in the society? The fuel price has been increased, yet we can't get it.
I'm supposed to be in my office and I'm not there because I have to come and do this. So it's affecting me, unlike if I have to just drive in before now, within 5-10 minutes, buy my fuel into the car and I'm off.
Well, Nigeria's faced with the highest inflation it's seen in 28 years, topping 33.2%. This week, the government did try to offset some of that strain by raising public sector salaries by between 25 and 35%. But Tinubu's removal last year of petrol subsidies and foreign currency controls have contributed to the skyrocketing cost of food and essentials, which has left millions of Nigerians struggling to get by.
Margaret can no longer make ends meet as her monthly salary of €23 cannot cover the rent of the room she shares with her daughter. The cost of living in Nigeria is increasing by the day. The financial strain has forced 2 other of her children to drop out of school.
Every day we wake up, we come to think, I'm going to feed my daughter, I'm going to cook, I'm going to send money to my children in the village. It's very, very tough.
Inflation in Nigeria topped 33% in March, the highest it's been since 1996. Shola is a fashion designer and is worried about losing customers. She uses imported fabrics that her suppliers purchase in dollars. The Naira's value has plummeted by 49%, so she has had to hike her own prices by 50%.
Can imagine what you purchase for like 500, you're purchasing for like 1,000 to 1,500. So and you can't just arbitrarily just start increasing the cost of making an outfit.
With a market of 220 million consumers, the Nigerian economy is now dominated by service and agriculture sectors. Many of its supplies are imported, and the country needs a lot of foreign currency. But the rising cost of living can't only be blamed on the weakening of the Naira. Economists also point to the conflict's effect on agriculture as farmers and herdsmen continue to clash in central and northern Nigeria.
We can have immediate salutary effects if only the federal government of Nigeria is able to summon the political will and the military capacity to recapture the agricultural economy from the hands of the terrorists that have besieged it.
The Nigerian government is hoping for a loan of $2.25 billion from the World Bank. More than 50% of this will be used to support social programs.
Well, Ethiopia's cost of living crisis was also top of mind for trade unions on Wednesday as key representatives met with the Labour Ministry for International Labour Day. As well as pushing for a minimum wage, activists flagged up the damage being done to the economy by ongoing conflict in Amhara in the north. Our correspondent tells us more.
Several unions expressed their claims on stage in front of government representatives. They came together on Labour Day to call for the government to do more to combat the rising cost of living. The first demand on Wednesday focused on the economic drag caused by conflict. Representatives emphasized the importance of pushing for dialogue to resolve ongoing fighting between federal army and militias in Amhara and Oromia regions. Against the backdrop of inflation, they are calling on the government to reduce income tax in order to improve the living conditions of Ethiopian workers, whose average salary is equivalent to about 150 euros a month. They also back the introduction of a national minimum wage. The proposal is also supported by the Confederation of Ethiopian Employers, which sees it as a way to attract more foreign investors.
The due diligence acts that will be enforced in the coming couple of years will support only economies that can establish or have already established minimum wage to export their goods to European market. Otherwise, if you don't have those things, plus some other also decent work issues, countries will not be able to export their goods to foreign markets like European economy.
Ethiopia is attractive for the very cheap labor in the manufacturing sector, especially for textiles. In 2022, the country attracted $3 billion in foreign direct investment, and the government wants to increase this income. As for the minimum wage, it is considering the possibility, but then comes the question of how much. Some factories already apply one for their basic workers, but it rarely exceeds 1,500 beer a month, or the equivalent of just over 24 euros a month, which, as many at the Labour Day meeting pointed out, leaves many Ethiopians struggling to make ends meet.
Clotilde Azar there for us in Addis Ababa. Now, extreme rains in East Africa continue to cause havoc. In Tanzania, at least 155 people have been killed since March, as flash floods have destroyed homes, buildings, roads, and key crops. The regions of Pwani and Morogoro have been hit the hardest, and rescue agencies have been scrambling to get to those most in need. Kenya has also been hit by the deluges. At least 181 there have lost their lives because of the torrential rains. Some survivors have had to be airlifted from danger this week. However, bodies are still being recovered, and the militaries joined in the search for survivors. At least 48 people were lost to raging waters that swept through the town of Mai Mahiu on Monday. Survivors are struggling to come to terms with their loss there.
The water came, and I felt as if something was falling. That's when the water swept us with my wife and child. I got stuck and was drenched in mud. I got up and started looking for my child. The baby had cried for a while, but I could not find them. There was nothing I could have done.
The relentless downpours have been fueled by the El Niño weather pattern, which, though natural, has seen its impact amplified somewhat by climate change. As East Africa struggles with unprecedented flooding, elsewhere on the continent, drought has taken hold. Across southern Africa, in Zambia, Malawi and Botswana, lakes and rivers have dried up. And it's not just people struggling to survive the devastation.
Dozens of hippos trapped in a pool of mud. Just a few months ago, this river was flowing freely. Today, it's completely dried out, and its wildlife has nowhere to flee to.
We're experiencing a severe drought in our village. This pond had water, but it's completely dried up. Our animals get stuck in this muddy pond every day when they try to drink the water. There's absolutely no water, as you can see. Even the hippos are stuck.
Induced by the El Niño weather pattern, which should last until May, this is one of the region's worst droughts in 4 decades. Since January 2024, extreme climate shocks have killed more than 130 people and destroyed over 2 million hectares of crops across southern Africa.
The river has gone dry. We are currently not getting any clients as we used to. The fishing industry has gone down. Trees are slowly dying. It's not even lush green as we used to experience. Our canoes have run dry and people are actually suffering.
In Botswana, thousands of people have been forced to flee to the north of the country, close to the wetter national parks.
We've moved temporarily because of the drought. We've lost most of our livestock, especially the younger calves. Since we've moved here, the situation has gotten better. Our animals are better. I hope we'll survive the drought.
24 million people in southern Africa are now facing what the UN calls acute hunger, and water scarcity has also aggravated the cholera outbreak in the region, which has killed over 4,000 people since the start of 2023.
In southern Algeria, a traditional irrigation system that relies on groundwater is still being used to perpetuate greenery in what would otherwise be desert. The Fougara rely on specially constructed galleries that direct water to palm groves and oases using techniques that are over 800 years old. Take a look.
In the bowels of the earth, Abdelhamid finds his way. His task is to inspect the well that channels groundwater to the surface, an ancestral irrigation system known as the Fougara.
This is the largest and longest Fougara in the wilaya of Timimoun in the Gurara region. This heritage that we have here was built by our ancestors nearly 800 years ago. They built these tunnels with their hands.
In those days, the task was performed by slaves. Today, workers have to dig down to a depth up to 30 meters to remove the sand or earth by hand when a well's pipe is blocked. The water is then used to irrigate oases or fields, as these farmers.
This water comes from where it is collected, which is the source of division and distribution of the water. The water then flows into the orchard, where the reservoir is filled. The farmer then takes his share of the water according to the agreed division. Each farmer receives the water that is sufficient for his orchard, depending on the surface area, where the orchard is large or small.
The know-how of the workers in these Fougaras is inscribed on a list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. For now, the tradition carries on. For some, it's still a miracle. The Fougara keeps oases growing in the middle of the desert.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.